Hi, welcome to my literary analysis of the Spamtenna Pipis scene. I'm referencing the one where they physically share screen time, not all the times where they mention each other. Like, we get it, you can't stop thinking about your ex, but geez, no need to bring him up every second. Now, before I get into this, I had previously posted a video where I just talked about my love for these two characters, and I ended up getting a lot of comments on that video, and I just wanted to say that I appreciate every single one of them. But I got a lot, so I couldn't go and reply to all of them, and I felt a bit unfair if I only replied to one or two. So I tried recording a video where I read all of them, and that is an hour and 45 minutes. So I decided I wouldn't upload that or edit it because that's a lot, and I doubt anyone would want to sit through that much video. So instead, I'm just giving a little appreciation post right here, right now. Thank you to everyone who commented. I'm glad that you could relate to my story. I'm glad that so many of you are rediscovering your love of art. I'm glad that so many of you are just enjoying your time with these guys. And also to all the kind words about my art, and to everyone who recognized me from Twitter, thank you so much. It means the world to me. So without further ado, let's get into why you're here. Now, why did I decide to do this? Not only do I love these guys, and they've been on my mind, but I saw someone say that this scene is trash. And I don't know, I felt kind of odd about it. Like, it got me thinking. This scene was intentionally included in the game. Yes, it was an odd scene and somewhat tonally different from a lot of other scenes. For instance, this is one of the few times where the soul is technically not present. We've gotten a couple of cutscenes between characters before, however, this is one of the rare instances where it is just the NPCs, Tenna and Spamton. And Chris and the soul are off screen, but you understand me, it's a bit of a weird scene. So, like, Toby Fox intentionally put it here, and you can't sit there and say it was fanfare either, because, like, no one, well, besides that one Twitter artist that was, like, making a bunch of Spamtenna posts leading up to the release of Chapter 3. I know! I saw your art. Actually thought that Spamton and Tenna had some ex-lovers quarrel. And some people have made the argument that it is more fanfare for Spamton, but I think later in the video I get into that. Anyway. But what's the #1 rule when making a scene you want people to pay attention to? Make it weird, make it unique, make it stand out. So let's get into it. First I'll show the full scene, then I'll go through it bit by bit, and then go further in depth, and then, I guess, we'll do a summary at the end. Yeah. Okay? Let's rock and roll. Let's get this show going. It's Mr. Obist's fuck-ass gay analysis time!
Not at all, because I've got something you guys will never have. Something big, something very secret.
Is a suspicious drawer. Open it? Yes. Huh? This is a... Damn, Ted is coming! Split!
What the? How did this get out here? My secret? No, everyone's gonna know that it's over. I'm at my limit. If only anyone was here for me. I'd even take that little mailman. Suddenly, the deal maker came out of your inventory.
You guessed it! You really do care!
What the? What the? Mama, what the? Mama, me, mama, hey, what, mama, what's that, mama, what the heck, mama, me, what the, hey, what, mama, what the heck, hey, mama, me, hey, mama, what the heck, mama, me, hey, what is that? Mama, me, what the heck, mama, me, what the, Mama, what the heck is that thing? Some kind of rat? Some kind of creature?
Don't you recognize?
Stay away from her, you fiend! Oh, my little darling, are you okay? Did that overly small, weird, unidentified thing hurt you? Don't worry, you're going to go someplace safe.
Before we actually analyze the actual scene, let's jump back into the sister scene, where you do not have the deal maker. As I'd like to figure out exactly what the intentions of the Pippis in these scenes are, that makes it sound so nefarious. I mean, like, the purpose, the ethereal intent in this scene. What does it symbolize?
Fine, you think I care? Of course not. Not at all. Because I've got something you guys will never have. Something big, something very secret.
It's a suspicious drawer. Open it? Yes. Huh? This is a... Damn! 10 is coming! Split!
What? How did this... I don't know what this is.
Tenna's? Is that yours? It's a shame. Who knew Tenna was into that stuff? Gross.
So I saved one. Why? What's the big deal? Everyone does it. Come on, don't act like you've never had one before. Come on!
First, let's get into the previous Pippis references. Gosh, there's so many. I have to explain before I can even get started on this stupid scene. Bear with me. What are the Pippis? Derived from the word Pippis. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. So they're these little blue round objects that appear in the Spamton Neophyte, as well as enemies in Queen's Mansion and on the Snowgrave route. Well, that's good and all. What a wonderful initial definition, but why are they called Pippis Egg in the files? Spamton calls them the boys, despite Tenna later referencing to his one as she, but they're also a food item and you can eat these. Well, you can also eat eggs, but I guess this is weirder because they're personified. Like they're fertilized. Like they're personified as if they are fertilized, not saying that they are. Metaphorically, they might be fertilized with the metaphor of... I'm gonna get into this later. I can't go on a rant first. It's not even like 5 minutes into this video. I can't start ranting. Anyway, most of us within the fandom have concluded that these are in some way eggs, as they are labeled in the files. They contain tiny Spamtons, they're edible, they're called eggs. You know, other than that, they can multiply. They're referred to as an invasive species of freshwater clam, so I guess they could also be a clam. They're indestructible, apparently, to Darkner means, since Tenna shoots one in his intro. Tenna has a lot of weapons. Like, I'm pretty sure it's been pointed out by some people on Twitter, but Tenna has a bunch of weapons. Bunch of guns. Also, someone on Twitter has already made a giant document detailing exactly what a Pippis is and what it means both for Spamton and Tenna in a biological sense. But within this literary analysis, I just kind of want to figure out what they mean in a metaphorical sense. What it is symbolizing in the current scene. You know, that stuff. However, going back to that Twitter post, which I will link down there in the description below, go check it out. From the post, I'd like to highlight sections where it refers to Tenna's relationship and Spamton's to the Pippis. The original poster draws on the implications that since Tenna is based off an ant, that he is cannibalizing the unfertile eggs during a dire situation, which is common to do with ants. The poster lists these specific circumstances, gosh, that took me like 5 times to get out. Anyway, as the TV world being forgotten, tenuous relationships to the Nye, and increasing problems with his employees. Now, I'd like to add, for the sake of this argument, that another dire situation could be his relationship to Spamton. Now, you may be saying, but that was like 7 odd years ago, because Des disappeared 7 years ago, and thus the Dreamer and Holiday relation stopped working, and they stopped bringing the computer to over, and anyway, that was 7 odd years ago. Yes, I know. But I swear, Tenna brings up his ex every opportunity he can. I'm not gonna link the whole Spamtenna supercut, but most of that cut is just kind of from Tenna's side, and it's just him bringing up his ex. He thinks about him often, too often, daily even. So the die situation, I will add, is his relations to his very bad breakup that he still thinks about. Situationship can affect a lot of people, I'm just saying. Anyway, so ants cannibalize their offspring in dire situations. We can conclude that Tenna does in fact grind the Pippis up into his TV dinners, since it's directly stated, which, as the OG poster mentions, is more befitting towards male unfertilized eggs rather than female ones. Tenna implies the one in his cupboard is female, therefore it will not be cannibalized. However, you can also imply that this is the OG one, which all the other clones stem from, like the source clone. So obviously he wouldn't want to grind that one up because it's the source, and he needs to create more TV dinners. Now, for the sake of keeping this under an hour, I'm not sure if it will be, I will be using the interpretation that the Pippis in the no deal breaker scene eggs, a type of food in a literal sense as well as a metaphor. What metaphor? We will come back to that. And in the deal breaker scene, it's also an egg/clam, however, not a food item. I would like to specify. It is more of an offspring in the way it is treated. So, summary, no deal breaker scene, NDS, Pippis is a food item. In the deal breaker scene, DS, it is an offspring. Okay, let's get to understanding metaphors. In the NDS, I'd like to say that the Pippis is a metaphor for the relationship that Spamton and Tenna shared, past tense, which everyone and their mother is currently saying, yeah, no duh, but there seems to be a rather large fear in the TV world, at least on Tenna's end and to an extent his employees' end, of being outdated via the internet/cyber world. And many of the TV world darkness actually dislike Ram, which together lets me interpret this as some kind of dislike between the two worlds. So, for the sake of the argument, in the NDS, the Pippis is a stand-in for the taboo relationship, which was highly scrutinized by the inhabitants of the TV world. Also, a weird food item. The text that appears when explaining the Pippis seems genuinely disgusted by its use in the TV dinners as well, so you could conclude that their disgust is not derived from the fact that it is a food item, but is from the Cyber City world. However, you could also just conclude that it's a really gross food item, like Brussels sprouts or something. And the other metaphor in the DS, I'll get into that at some point. Later. We have time. We have plenty of time. So, the fun gang find the Pippis hidden away in a place which we can access after Tenna says something big, something very secret. Okay, first let's break this sentence down. Because I've got something you guys will never have, explanation point. Something big, something very secret. Let's first look at the tone of this statement. Overall, it's positive. We can see this through his sprite animations and also the use of explanation points. Now, explanation points obviously can be used as a signifier of fear or yelling or such. The overall positive connotations used within this sentence lead me to believing it's positive. It's basic sentence structure, man. I don't know. I'm getting into it though. The capitalization in I've draw attention to the speak, meaning he does want to be associated with this something. However, he doesn't specify, so there is a natural mysterious element to this whole charade, I guess. Those weren't the right words. Anyway. However, the following capitalizations are to really hone in on the secrecy and reliance of this something. And the big is in reference to Spamton, you know, as he sees the egg as a tie to Spamton because it's Spamton's egg. And Spamton was a big shot. Big. Ha 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 ha. Also, whenever Tenna is big, it means he has some positive feelings. So describing the Pippis as big means that he has positive feelings towards it, if that makes sense. However, he's also not referring to the egg as a individual, rather a something, so its ties are more of a sentimentality rather than an actual fondness for the creature itself. So it's more about the inherent value that this item can bring rather than the inherent value it has as a creature. And it's not a creature in this scene, it's a food item. So the emphasis/capitalization could mean that he's overcompensating, relying on his capitalization to drive home this argument that he has something better than everyone. His laugh at the end of this is an attempt to spy others, or could just be a resistant reading as a nervous laugh, either or. Tenna overall seems quite happy with this secret something, however he still needs to keep it a secret as something you guys will never have. He implies an element of possessive nature over this something, or, as a resistant reading, an element of shame because he doesn't want to specify what he has and what has led him to have this thing that they will never have, you know? as it fits his character. It also references how these Darkness can never have this type of metaphorical relationship to another Darkness from another world, since the method of getting from world to world has disappeared literally, and most dislike Ram, so cultivating anything further is out of the possibility. Okay, so will I be doing this with the rest of his lines? No, but I just kind of wanted to set the scene that I will be going into pretty hard analysis with this. But TLDR, Tenna has positive feelings towards this egg. It's a possessive nature since it's a remnant of his and Spamton's past relationship, directly calling it big. The egg is also kind of big, so we can infer he means it literally, but alternatively, we can mean that he's referencing Spamton. But he must keep it a secret because there are outside negative opinions regarding his relationship to Spamton, as well as his own internal feelings towards it. Anyway, let's get into the no deal breaker scene, NDS. But first, a worm from our sponsors. Who are our sponsors? Why, me, of course. If you want some art commissioned, well, head on over to my VGen, where I offer commissions. Also, head on over to my Twitter, where you can see some examples of my artwork. And if you're looking for a writer, well, you've come to the right place, because I have a fanfic up on AO3. And you should go check that out, because it's genuinely some of my proudest writing. And I don't know, I feel like I offer up a different kind of reading of these characters and way of writing them, so I'm not sure. Go check that out as well, if you're so inclined to. Also, if you're looking for anyone to do voice acting, I wouldn't be opposed to voice acting in some little personal projects. You can see my voice acting examples on my Spamtenna Super Cup dub. Check that one out, I'm genuinely proud of it, but do not wear headphones, you will hurt your ears. Anyway, back to my VGen. If there's something you want specifically that I don't offer, I have an option to make a custom request, and we can hash things out around that. Thank you, and back to your regularly scheduled yaoi. Okay, so the fun Kang crumbs across this drawer. In an empty room, no music, obviously it's to draw your attention to that specific drawer. Therefore the scene, meaning the scene is important. However, you can opt to or opt not, because it's not overly important as to require you to go and experience the scene within your interpretation of the story. However, it is strongly hinted towards as, you know, isolation of the item in the scene, as well as the suspicious drawer. Do you want to open it? Yes or no? When you offer a yes or no question, I feel like people are like 50-50 chance, rather than just saying it's a suspicious drawer. Like Toby Fox could have just had, it's a suspicious drawer. Do you want, and like left it at that, and if you re-clicked on it, then you could have been like, oh, do you want to open it or not? But no, he straight up asks you first time, so I'm just saying it will probably complement the story that you are currently experiencing if you do open the drawer. I'm getting way too into this. But it's not so pressuring as to do it like those through your imagination scene Susie things, because Ralsei never like pressures you to go and check it out again. So obviously it's not too important. Also, the Pippis is kept in a cupboard, by the way, which denotes like more care than if it was kept in a box, but like less care if it was kept in a safe. Wait. What is another word for cupboard? Thesaurus. Insert thesaurus joke. Closet. Holy shit! It's a closet metaphor. He's keeping his relationship with Spamton in the closet. Maybe not in a literal sense, because it was clear that they actually had a lot of interaction, a lot to do with each other. However, they were never like called lovers or called marriage. So the element of keeping his past relationship with the closet, even if the world around Deltarune isn't homophobic in itself, and I will say, I don't think homophobia in the traditional sense exists in the Monster Society or the Darkness Society. However, I'm going to say that the taboo relationship between Spamton and Tenna leads it to take on some kind of element of needing to keep it in the closet. Anyway, closet metaphor, guys. Closet metaphor. Now, Ralsei recognizes the Pippis. This is surprised, obviously. And within a world where Ralsei knows everything in the prophecy, pretty much down to the letter, he's genuinely shocked when he sees a Pippis in the TV world. Somewhere where it shouldn't be, like the relationship between Spamton and Tenna. Holy shit, does Spamtenna defy the prophecy? Wait a sec. I know the prophecy won't outright say Pippis found in blue drawer, but guys, Rolse is genuinely shocked. He wasn't expecting Tenna to have this. Similarly, he relates that the Spamton neophyte was odd and we shouldn't think about it. But this is the scene where you haven't fought Spamton. How does Rolse know what a Pippis looks like? How does he know? Oh my gosh. I'm not a good enough theorist to derive any meaning from this, but I swear the Pippis and Spamtenna are the key to solving Deltarune. I need to keep going. I can't stay with this. I'm going to go insane. I've been going insane. I'm like 2 pages into this. I need to keep it. So, Tenna comes and he's shocked to find that the Pippis is out of its box. He's not using pronouns for the egg, therefore he's not seeing it as he normally does in the Dealbreaker scene. I'm just saying that because I want to imply that both scenes have different interpretations of the Pippis, due to the personal pronoun usage towards the Pippis. Tenna starts to coyly deny his association to the Pippis, as if he's playing off his actual association to it. The audience appears, picking up on this, questioning what he's doing with one. I think in this scene we can interpret this stuff to be a reference to the cannibalization of the egg youth into the TV dinners, because it is mentioned before that it is kind of weird. But alternatively, we can take this as a metaphor for the Spamtenna relationship. But that's like major reading versus minor reading. So, you know. The major reading is definitely the consumption of the Pippis and how that is a taboo act. As Tenna states, don't act like you've never tried one before. But before he says everyone does it, which could mean everyone eats Pippis. But would you say, but if someone were to ask you, hey, do you eat snails? And you were to say, everyone does it, that doesn't naturally flow in dialogue. However, if you were to say, do you search Tenna up on that one side of Twitter? And then someone were to say, everyone does it, that flows better in dialogue. So in that case, I would say, don't act like you've never had one is more in reference to the food symbolism. And then everyone does it is more in reference to the relationship metaphor. Like he means everyone has relation to Cyber City Darkness, which is obviously untrue, but the way Tenna says it and the reaction of the audience is meant to imply that his speech is contradictory to the majority held views in TV world. Basically, he's really defensive in this scene. His relation to Spamton wasn't the norm, not everyone does it, it was a big deal, and in more than one way, deals, chroma. And also, not everyone eats Pippis. But everyone kinda does eat Pippis because they're in the TV dinners. But even the reference of the TV dinners, it's like, they play it up and they're like, oh my god, he grinds them up. Not people, Pippis. Like, it came off as a joke. It's not something as serious. This feels more, like this is also obviously a joke, but the actual like statements of who knew Tenna was into this stuff, the joke doesn't derive from the actual build-up of the statement, like it does in the scene where they're talking about Pippis grinding. That's an awful string of words that I just said. I'm gonna move on. Now in this cutscene, Tenna ends up leaving the Pippis behind after the interaction with the audience. He leaves it there, he doesn't take it with him, he doesn't touch it. So obviously the sentimentality he had for it had died within this audience disapproval. Which relates back to the idea that his character is reliant on the thoughts of others to hold his own value. I think this has implications for the future of the relationship between Tenna and Spamton, since you never ended up doing the Spamton secret boss, you never ended up saving Spamton, leaving him to rot away in a dumpster without developing his story or character. I think by the end of the NDS scene, the Pippis is in a way becoming Spamton. He never developed, he never was able to achieve any freedom, most likely because you did encounter him, most likely you didn't feel the need to go after him. The personal disapproval that you felt as the player projected onto this character, meaning that you had no desire to develop his story or you just missed out on all the context cues. Because it is hard. It is hard to find Spamton if you don't know what you're looking for. But in the case that I am talking to a player that didn't actually want to go out after Spamton, in a way, Tenna is replicating that by not wanting to go and save the Pippis from the public scrutiny. Therefore, the player not wanting to save, quote-unquote, Spamton because of the way the game had developed or just being uninterested in the plot point. Now, you can take the Pippis after this scene, however, so that kind of defeats my metaphor, but within the scene, you don't have to take it. You can also leave it behind. But maybe that's to symbolize that there is a possibility to go back to save these secret bosses in future chapters. You know? Maybe. And also, it's called a certain person's special question mark, question mark, question mark. The relation of what it is unclear, but you can eat it. Now, saying a certain person's special, it has like a romantic vibe to the phrasing. Not in relation to how the player sees Tenor or anything, but more so a certain person. When you say a certain person, you're honing in on that individual. A lot of the time in romantic lettering or romantic like media, they'll be like, oh, are you interested in a certain someone? A certain person. Certain has a lot more positive uses in romantic media, but you could also say that it has a lot of negative uses in other things, like certain person is gonna get a certain surprise. Even then, it's like a lot of the times when certain is used, it's often in a positive or ironically positive sentence. Anyway, and then special question mark, question mark, question mark means that the Pippis had some kind of positive influence within Tenor's life. It's special to him. Like their relationship. Anyway, you can take it to the Z rank room where it'll start crying after being in there for a while and it makes noises, and a lot of our Spamtenna fans say it misses its dad, but you can also then just eat it and it makes a dying noise. Wonderful. Thank you, Toby Fox. This is wonderful. Also, it's worth mentioning that Tenor shoots the Pippis in his intro. He definitely has some resentment towards it, but his overcompensation of referring to it as something big and secret means he is conflicted by its presence, you know. If you love something, you don't go, I have something very secret and very, very special, but I'm also gonna shoot it in my intro. But you also don't do that if you hate something, so the confliction is very present. However, I believe this confliction ends at the end of the NDS scene, as he leaves it and thus his past relationship / ties to Spamton. Cue the bad ending card or whatever. So, now for the actual scene, which you all clicked on for the video. Yeah, let's move on to that one. Okay, so it opens the same way as before. Fun gang find the thing, Rousey knows what it is. Tenor comes in, and the dialogue is slightly different. Like, not too different, but it is different. He capitalizes this, so I think we can infer his capitalizations are referring to one another. And when I say capitalizations, I mean the ones that he was referring to with the big and secret. That one. That's the capitalization I'm referring to. So he's obviously not talking about something other than that secret. Because I just know someone out there is probably saying, he could not be referring to the Pippis in that scene. He's referring to the Pippis in that scene. He is definitely not referring to his secret deal with Crystal the Knight. Anyway, moving on. Now, Tenor, in a moment of stress, goes directly to the Pippis. We know it's not because he was alerted or anything about the Pippis being outside of the drawer, because he's shocked to find that it is. Anyway, so he seeks it out in comfort, I will assume, because you don't tend to go towards something unless you're seeking it out for comfort. You could make the argument that he's seeking it out to shoot it, but the way he stresses that, it has the positive affirmations in his previous text with the capitalizations, I doubt he's going to go to it to shoot it, because he just doesn't end up shooting it. So obviously he's going to seek it out for comfort and not as a rage punching bag type thing. Anywho, overwhelmed by the idea people will know. Now, that metaphor. I wouldn't say it's exactly the same, but I would say it is pretty similar to the NDS scene, with a slight difference in metaphorical interpretation. Because like I said in the explaining of the scenes and how the Pippis is interpreted in each scene, in this scene, the Pippis is interpreted as an offspring rather than a consumable item, stemming from the interpretation that it is an egg. The Pippis in the scene is their child, and it also represents all that the two have built together, their past and their future together. As the NDS scene just references their past entanglement, I believe that in the DS scene, it encompasses their future, their past, and all of which has collated, as a child does often represent that, is the culmination of two people, or more if you're counting Rule's card. It is both the past of that relationship building up to that culmination, as well as the future ongoing, as the child is that bringing together, if that makes any sense. So the Pippis is their child, both in terms of a literal sense of creation, as well as their creations during the Big Shot era together. But back to the fact, in a moment of stress, Tenna seeks out the comfort of his previous relationship to the mailman through the physical representation of it, Pippis. Now, in reaction to seeing the Pippis outside of its cupboard, one might even say, out of the closet. It's a closet, oh my god, it's a closet metaphor! But, before we continue, I'd like to draw attention to the fact that it is a cupboard it's kept in. You'd think if he really cared about it, he'd keep it somewhere safer? I don't know, maybe not shot in the intro? Well, like I said, the Pippis is his relationship to Spamton, which I previously mentioned is conflicted. Also, I think their divorce is also a parallel, like obviously it's not stated as a divorce, but it is a splitting of a partnership, and there's very clear parallels from this divorced couple to the other divorced couple, and there is some actual, like, underlying neglect going on in that family. You can see it in Chris's bedroom, you can see it in the way that Asgore talks to Chris. All of his attention is directed to Toriel when he interacts with that side of the family, and then later goes on to Chris. Most of the time, I find that it is the role of the parent to prioritize their child in a situation of divorce, but that is just my opinion on the matter, you know. However, I'm not saying the dreamers are, that is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there's elements of neglect going on within their household, and I think Spamtenna somewhat replicates this in terms of the way the Pippis is treated. You could also compare the way the Pippis is treated and how it is a comparison for Toriel's relationship to Chris in the universal mother theory, because I'm pretty sure Queen says some stuff about how Chris doesn't have opinions, and it is heavily implicated that Queen only seeks Chris out when they're relevant to them. So in a way, Tenna also only seeks the Pippis out when the Pippis is relevant to him. I'm just saying there's parallels to be compared. But back to Tenna's relationship to Spamton. He keeps it in his mind a lot, with the countless references, as well as trying to put it as far away as possible, but still just always being present within pretty much anything he does. And whenever it's brought up in front of other people, he tries to get rid of it, right, like move it under the rug as if it doesn't affect him. Acknowledging that it affects him would be acknowledging that it was important. And I don't think Tenna is the type of person to do that. Whatever the case, it's clear that Tenna won't actively seek to get rid of his affiliations to Spamton, aside from the violent outburst seen through the rotten glass and Z-rank. He's only really getting rid of any of his ties to Spamton when other people have comments on it, you know? It's clear his past is a guilty pleasure which he is quick to abandon if in the case that social disapproval should entangle with it. However, no one showed up to disapprove in this scene. And don't bring him up yet, we'll get to him later. Other than the stress of the conflicting thoughts about the Pippis and whatnot, it could have just been the idea that someone found the Pippis that makes him break down, but I'm gonna say something later. Anyway, so Tenna is left to break down by himself. Obviously, he's at his limit. The guy had a rough day. Tenna likes to keep things going on script, it seems, from his shock that Susie found him chatting to the denial of continuing to play, which he had made a deal with Chris to keep the Fun Gang distracted, so obviously this is an element that is out of his control in this situation, and I don't think he likes that. So, I'd like to say, and this is a headcanon brought about by a lot of canon speculation, that Tenna unconsciously goes to the Pippis for comfort. Like, obviously he does mention that he has something big, something secret, something you will never have. But I think that the way he says that implies that he's done this previously, that he continues to do this. This is a thing that he often does, as it's clear that this is not something new. Like, so he kept one. It seems that keeping it, I'm just saying, I'm just ranting at this point. This part is off script, so sorry, I'm not getting my thoughts out correctly. But you get what I mean. I think that Tenna is unconsciously going to the Pippis whenever he is stressed. However, it doesn't go to plan this time. The Pippis is not where it should be. It's out of place, only by a marginal amount, but it's still out of place. Something he didn't expect. Something that is outside of that unconsciousness. Even with no outside scrutiny to scrutinize his actions, it throws his system out of whack, which means he has to acknowledge that the Pippis is outside of where it's meant to be. In turn, acknowledging the fact that he even has the Pippis to begin with, as I'm speculating that he often goes to it, so he often has the same routine. It's just a routine in his mind. He doesn't think about it all that much. But as soon as something goes out of whack, like it's when you're walking from your room to another room and your coat gets caught on the door. I'm kind of comparing it to that. So he has to acknowledge that the Pippis is there, and thus he has to acknowledge the fact that his affiliations with Spamton, he's still keeping those around. So, since this system has gone out of whack, out of place, I believe that this minor wrench in his plans has pretty much instantly removed any comfort that he sought, since it's not how it's meant to be. Anyway, so he makes a desperate plea. If only anyone was here for me. I'd even take that little mailman. Okay, so why if the Pippis doesn't bring the comfort that he sought, and it's a representation of his and Spamton's relationship, why would he call out for the mailman? Truth is, I wrote a plot hole, but I am a writer by heart, and I will write my way out of this. Alright, put on the teaching glasses, put on the stick of teaching, let's go. Pippis equals comfort equals out of place equals acknowledgement equals recognition of why he seeks Pippis out equals admitting the truth of his feelings in regards to Spamton equals not saying his name both for subtlety and the association of shame equals Pippis out of whack equals desire for true comfort equals he wants Spamton back equals but he's too ashamed to admit it, so he just says mailman equals Doom Jowie equals did that make sense? There we go. Done. Good. Let's move on. Suddenly the deal maker came out of your inventory insert. What? No. Okay, obviously we didn't defeat the secret boss by killing them, so we know he's not dead. But they can do that? Why does this not... What? Does this not spit in the face of preconceived notions? Is what some people would be screaming at their scene. Some people who may consider this scene to be ass. That's some comical shade. I'm joking. Well, I don't know. Toby didn't include this scene for fan service. But like I said, it is argued that this might be Spamton fan service because he will want to put Spamton into everything. And why not put him into a chapter all about his ex? But he was already referenced to hell and back, so... And he wasn't in chapter 4. Okay, fine. Fine, Toby. You can get your mandatory Spamton every 2 chapters. Fine. So what if it is fan service? It's in relation to Tenor, so I'm gonna say it's more of a build-up for their relationship and a metaphorical thing. Also, I wrote this script before the 10th anniversary stream, and you are telling me that, oh my god, Toby Fox loves these two. Because fucking this is a rant, this is a side tangent. Spamton comes in, he replaces Sans, he goes, hey Chris, not Chris, Frisk, he interacts with Frisk, and he goes, hey Frisk, I'm gonna eat this large chip, and then I'm gonna rant about how my ex made me ugly. Peace. And also, what did he put on the TV? Why was there goop on the TV? Was that a thing? I'm not sure what it looked like to you, but it looked like something to me. I'm just saying, Toby Fox seems to really like this relationship, so I guess it could be just fan service for him, and it would be fan service for him. He built this up. He deserves it. But even then, is it really fan service if it's relevant to the story? And I'd say it's relevant, so it's not fan service, so it isn't an ass scene. So I've been ranting too much. I don't know. This scene is obviously a joke. We all know it, and it's totally not too far from the other jokes. But this is the rare occasion where the soul isn't, and this is an interaction between 2 NPCs, meaning this scene is kind of important, I guess. And yes, I know the fun gang is off screen, but it's all just, I don't know. It's a bit, I'm not a theorist, but I bet this could make a good theory. Let's continue. I'm ranting too much. This is gonna be over an hour long. I can see it now. 53 minutes into recording. Let's go. Spamton comes out of the inventory and he's not killing Tenna? Okay, throughout the whole Spamton sweepstakes, Mr. Kill Your TV over here was ranting and raving about getting rid of the CRT, only to come crawling back at the notion that his and Tenna's child, the Pippis, was kept, the remnants of their relationship being held onto by the dialogue, "You kept it." We can conclude that Spamton gave it to him as a possible gift, or the fact that it's literally their child. Depends on what type of person you are and where you are on Twitter, but, you know. Otherwise, alternatively, it could have just been something Tenna just kept, like Spamton had chucked it aside and Tenna kept it. Regardless, there is a shock from Spamton's side that Tenna still has it. This revitalizes their relationship, and it seems Spamton folds over all of his hatred towards Trash Heap. Wait, why call him Trash Heap? So, Spamton's brackets are confusing. Many say they're an involuntary ad speak, which Spamton seems to uphold at times, and others have said that they're voluntary and used when he's at a lack of words. Within the Spamton sweepstakes, we can see examples of both being true. Regardless, Spamton can use regular talking, especially in serious moments or dire ones, when he needs to be made clear. Like, for instance, the end of the Spamton Neo fight, or when he's trying to give instructions to Chris. But we're gonna be coming back to that. Regardless, Trash Heap is a lot of things. It's foreshadowing for where Tenna ends up if you don't spare everyone. It's also degrading, but also where Spamton sleeps since he's in a dumpster, a garbage can. It's really up to you how you see Spamton on whether or not this is him degrading him or calling Tenna his home. Or in Undertale, there's a trash heap with a mailbox and a TV in it. Anyway, let's go back to the serious moment thing. Aside from the brackets in Trash Heap, Spamton never uses his brackets again until the final part where it's doing that. Yeah, I know it's not a lot of dialogue, but he doesn't use the brackets when talking to Tenna, conveying some element of seriousness to the conversation. Obviously, it's a joke scene, so it's not serious in a regular nature, but I'm assuming it's important to him, so he wouldn't be using the brackets as he wants to be as clear as possible, like when he was giving instructions to Chris. Then he says, "You really do care." So let's assume the hatred for Tenna was derived off of this notion he didn't care for Spamton, which is backed by the fact that Tenna didn't go after Spamton when the benefactor over the phone broke things off, and his life fell down the drain. Spamton assumed that Tenna must have never cared for him, for their relationship, for the Pippis, the culmination of the two's being, because he never called. He never went after him. He changed his phone number according to the sweepstakes, so Spamton did try and reach out. Jeez, they're so doomed. But yeah, cause he kept it, Tenna is showing that he did care. He still cares. And obviously, this relationship means a lot to Spamton, that he is willing to go out of his way to reform and say hi to the guy that he assumed left him alone after the fallout of his Big Shot era. He could have reformed before this. He could have reformed when he met Tenna, when he saw him. He could have done something, said something, tried to kill him on first sight like he was saying he would. Obviously not. He wasn't obviously saying, "Oh, I'm gonna kill that CRT on sight," but he was definitely making an attempt to sound like he would have. The Pippis symbolizes the future relationship that they can have, as I mentioned, the hope Spamton has in that moment to take it back. This goes beyond a partnership, since he knows Tenna doesn't have much to offer at all. He's a tragic businessman who died at the now of the story, which I'll come back to later, but Spamton's aware that Tenna wouldn't bring him any financial incentive, any popularity gains. He's really just in it for those leather pants. I mean, I don't know, I'm gonna shut up now. Now that's all well and good, but Tenna doesn't recognize him and reacts, well, I'll just play it. There's not much to say in this scene. It's just Tenna freaking out, but I'll tie it back to something he says after. I mean, you could make the connection that Spamton often uses mama in his speech and Tenna uses it here. Just another example of stealing dialogue between the two toxic yaoi businessmen, but who am I to judge? Now, I'd just like to say that Tenna doesn't really have this sort of reaction to anything in the game aside from Spamton. Not to say he doesn't have over-the-top reactions, but the way he's reacted before to something over the top is more, well, you've seen the game. He just doesn't respond like this to anything else, and you could say it's for comedic intent. But I think there's an element of familiarity that might seep into him. I'll come back to that. You could also make the argument that this is all for show. His reaction to Spamton, where he acknowledges that this is Spamton, but is playing it off as if he doesn't. And the fact that he doesn't actually react like this to anything else in the game, it does lead some credibility to that interpretation. However, it is largely headcanon, so we cannot get into it. But as I was saying about that unfamiliarity, maybe he does recognize Spamton, just not consciously. Yes, I know, I was just saying I can't get into headcanon, but I'm getting into it. Also, by the way, Spamton is like Chris's height in the game. Obviously, he's not like small enough to be the size of a rat. But yeah. Anyway, obviously Tenna doesn't recognize Spamton in this scene because acid, heavy reference in canon, but not canonized. Anyway, so I was saying unconsciously he does recognize Spamton. Spamton says, "Don't you recognize?" before being cut off by Tenna, displaying some kind of defiance. Okay, so in every other case, Tenna has acted ashamed of the Pippis, upset at the Pippis, abandoning the Pippis at the time, whenever there is a probability that it could harm his image. But here, Tenna begins protecting it, calling said Pippis her. Now you can make the argument that in this scene, Tenna doesn't see the creature as more than just a thing, something that cannot pass judgment onto him as it's little more than a rat. However, I'd like to claim that in a way, he knows this is Spamton. It's evident that they had something romantic, or at least something very close. The references to the Curse My Dick Tumblr post, and the rant to Tenna linking to the wedding ring post and the sweepstakes, both referencing each other's motifs like Toriel and Asgore do famous other divorced couple. Just saying, they were very complimentary characters. And Tenna says he sweet-talked Spamton into letting him into his world, giving him life advice, and the way he phrases it makes it seem like something he doesn't often give out, so I believe that his prior closeness has probably remained quite clear in his subconscious. I mean, the amount of references this guy does. It was 7 years ago. Get over your situationship. So in some way, perhaps, he felt that familiarity come right back into his mind, and he unconsciously fell into the domestic life the two had previously had, falling into playing the role of the father to the Pippis once more. Are you seeing what I'm saying? I sound insane. I'm going insane.
Stay away from her, you fiend!
This is very knight in shining armor phrasing. Saying this line with such a jovial nature, his sprite coming to the kick animation only to switch to cover Spamton in insulating foam, which he's referenced before. There's this performative type nature where he's not actually going out and hurting this creature that he thinks has a malice intent, but it's very playful. And knights in shining armors often feel very childish, very playful, very performative, story-like almost. He's playing into a story. We're diving back into the headcanons. I know. So after the insulating foam incident, Spamton shows little resistance to any of this, mostly just standing there, probably processing that this has happened again. Tenna grabs the Pippis and explains, "Oh my little darling, are you okay?" Actively becoming that parent again to the Pippis. Spamton has re-entered his life. Whether he knows it or not, that instance has now re-sparked his comfort that was brought about by the Pippis. And it seems he's fallen back into that play, pretend, parental role that he previously had hard because of Spamton's reintroduction. TLDR, the memories of their past relationship have become dulled and no longer bring comfort, equals attempts to find said comfort in items associated to the past items bring shame.
equals, however, when the relationship that gave those objects comfort reappears, despite being rocky, resparks the comfort and elements of play those objects had to them, equals allowing the comfort to return. I have no clue what I'm saying, but it sounds thematic. I don't know, just keep on using big words until eventually you become a big shot. Continuing, did that overly small, weird, unidentifiable thing hurt you? Now I can claim all that I want, that the subconscious elements of Tenna know that this is Spamton. But Tenna's outward persona, his conscious, doesn't know this is Spamton, or at least he's not allowing anyone to see that he recognizes this as Spamton. It's just some unidentifiable weird thing that poses no threat to Tenna's social standing and cannot express anything despite being able to fully express through verbal communication Tenna's deep dark secrets. But he isn't just some weird unidentifiable thing. Listen, I'm really leaning on to my theory about Tenna subconsciously recognizing Spamton, so I'm gonna explain more about it. Tenna has to somewhat know this is Spamton. Maybe he's just really stressed, and the recognition that this is Spamton fully cannot be registered in the moment since he's focused on other things, but literally any person that gets wind of the Pippis makes him instantly break down and disassociate from the object. He's gotta know, even just a little, why else would his opinion on the Pippis change so much within a short amount of time? Maybe the possibility of harm coming to the thing that is left of his and Spamton's relationship could cause him to do that. That's a good possibility. After all, Tenna does ask if the Pippis, but he also shoots it in the intro, so he's not above hurting it. Well, regardless, whether it's because there's some element of familiarity that comes over Tenna when confronted by this Spamton-esque creature, enough to let his guard down and play into that domestic life the two shared, or just simply because there's a risk to the remnants of their physical embodiment together, it is clear that Spamton's presence has allowed Tenna to fall back into that comfort of the prior relationship through the Pippis. And the next part is just the cherry on top. Don't worry, you're going someplace safe. Capitalization on safe. Oh my god, dude. Tenna is taking the Pippis that was once kept in a cupboard, a closet, to somewhere safe. To which we never find out where that safe place is. So there's as much of a possibility that Tenna is keeping that piss on him as it is kept somewhere else, safer, quote unquote, within the TV world. And if this unidentifiable creature is not important enough for him to feel ashamed of the Pippis, then we conclude that he's probably not lying when he says he's gonna put it somewhere safe, because why would he lie to something that he doesn't think can form opinions on him? There could be a Pippis kept in Tenna, or there could not be a Pippis kept in Tenna. I'm just saying, Schrodinger's Pippis. Anyway, we can see, again, Tenna taking on this parental role as he reassures the Pippis not to worry, talking to it with personal pronouns and directly referring to it as you're, like he's having a conversation. Tenna takes the comforting object that symbolizes their relationship and is putting it somewhere safe to ensure its continued ability to remain in his life. He wants to re-spark that relationship, and if he does know that this is Spamton, and he's just pretending not to acknowledge him, could this be an attempt to show Spamton that he cares enough to let the Pippis remain in his life, and if Spamton tried a little harder and maybe said sorry or something, he would, you know, allow him back into his life? I don't know, I'm putting words out there. Also, it's worth mentioning that his sprite, when holding the Pippis, is one of the hooray variants, and you normally express hooray in achievement. So I'm gonna make the claim that alongside the previous nightly talk, I'll say that this is meant to show Tenna as achieving and saving the Pippis in a way akin to a knight saving a princess from a dragon. Also, on the sprite's resource, there is a note saying, under the Tenna freakout, this one frame makes the sheet 152 pixels taller. Damn you, Tenna, which is a direct reference to the Spamton sweepstakes. Oh my god, they reference each other in their sprite sheets. Even if he's not directly bringing Spamton along with him or acknowledging his existence, bringing the Pippis is acknowledging that relationship, which is a huge jump for Tenna. Since at the beginning, he wasn't going to acknowledge this relationship, he wasn't going to acknowledge the Pippis. calling it a this. And then suddenly Spamton comes back into the picture and it's a you're? Just saying. If we'd like to go back to the knightly interpretation of the reading, Tenna saved the Pippis from the dragon, and in a way was him saving the positive and comforting parts of their relationship from the actual confrontation of the fallout. That could be another interpretation, which is what happened to Spamton and how he appears now, and the fact that Tenna didn't help him out during the part where he needed it the most. Going with that interpretation, the Pippis could be the romanticization of the relationship that him and Spamton had, acknowledging all the positives and relegating all of the negatives to the back of his mind, the back of the closet, oh my god. But yeah, that's just one interpretation though, along with my previous interpretation. Anyway, Tenna saves the Pippis and therefore the future possibility to develop their relationship further in chapters. But I don't know, that reading could just be for my hopes and dreams for the future. I'm so funny. Anywho, Tenna slides off screen and the fun gang reappears. Spamton tells Chris that he's never doing that again. The bracket's coming back, the bracket's coming back. Which lovingly spits in the face of my whole previous analysis for the hopes and future of their relationship. But here's the kicker. This is a miscommunication. For Tenna, Spamton's reintroduction into his life resparks his love for the Pippis. For Spamton. However, for Spamton, this is another failed attempt to contact Tenna. He's never doing that again, he says. What is that he's referring to? Is it Tenna? Is it the relationship that was there? Is it him trying to reconcile? It is unclear. But he seems fine to try before Tenna sprayed him with the foam. So yeah, in Spamton's case, he kind of just admits that he's never doing that again. Which is also contradictory, because he says we don't need CRTs, we don't need easels, but suddenly he's going back to Tenna. Also, he says never doing that again, I'm pretty sure, in the 10th anniversary stream. I don't know if he says it exactly like that, and I'm not bringing it up to find it. I'm bringing it up to find it. I'm gonna go back. I'll be right back with you, folks. Okay, I'm back. I looked at the 10th anniversary stream. He says, I'm, brackets, never doing that again, brackets. He's bracketing his own speech. Spamton in the cutscene says, he goes, never, brackets, doing that, brackets, again. He's bracketing his own speech. It's a direct reference to the Spamtenna scene. And when he says that he's never doing that again, it's when he gets sprayed in the face with something. He's making a joke out of it. It's on his mind. Maybe he regrets saying that he's never doing that again. Or maybe he's referencing the insulating foam. He's never letting Tenna spray him with the insulating foam again. I'm going insane. I'm going insane. Anyway, what does that mean? Spamtenna is over? Well, I think, in a way, yes. But mostly no. After this scene, Spamton narrates, during Tenna's boss scene, some negative opinions. Tragic business, man. So, the resentment has been refueled. However, this comes up with or without the cutscene, so I'm gonna make the presumption that this is to alert the player that Spamton is referencing Tenna in the Spamton sweepstakes, rather than the renewal of his negative thoughts on Tenna. Also, him saying that he's never doing that again could just mean that he's never approaching the reconciliation like that specifically. Again, there's always the possibility that it'll give him another go. You know, guys, remain positive. Guys, remain positive. Okay, so finally, let's get into what the two scenes mean to the greater narrative of Spamtenna. The NDS scene is definitely the scene that shows how everyone has given up on Spamton. The player never went out and fought Spamton Neo, making his journey to redemption never begin. Tenna's comfort that he gained from the Pippis, how it is very big. Also, I just thought about how when Tenna is happy, he is big, and when he is sad, he is small. Big associates positive emotions, so describing the Pippis as big means that we can say it is positive. Anywho, I thought I'd get that out of the way. Back to the interpretation. The comfort is now gone. In its place is the final hit of shame that Tenna can take before he ultimately abandons any hope for his relationship with Spamton, any ties that he had. With it, the Pippis.
But this also happens if you kill Spamtenna I in the fight, so I do think it is the bad ending, personally. Because ideally you want to save all the secret bosses. I just think that's the heroic thing to do, or at least the heroic thing that Deltarune is leading you to do as the player. Then there is the DS, where Spamton is able to go on that redemption arc through the player saving him, as well as resparking Tenna's appreciation for their past relationship through the threatening of the embodiment of it, which makes Tenna appreciate it and want to protect it. This Pippis, since we gotta keep in mind they never really officially broke it off, Spamton ran away, things are open-ended. Anyway, back to the NDS scene. I think following it, you should give Tenna to Metaton. Where did this come from? I think it makes narrative sense if we look at it alongside the secret bosses that you didn't save. Spamton was never able to go beyond his current state. He's remained undeveloped within his arc. I think this carries over to Tenna. At the end, when you give him to Metaton, yes, this is something he asks for and wants to be adopted by somebody else. It develops Metaton, and I'm always for some good Metaton development. I really like Metaton in Undertale, and I think that I really miss the narcissistic personality of Metaton. I like the narcissistic Metaton, I'm just saying it now. Anyway, that's just me. I like Undertale Metaton, I guess. Anyway, but also, Deltarune Metaton doesn't have much screen time, so I can't really say that I prefer either character. Who knows? Anyway, let's not get into this. But giving him to Metaton is in line with his current thinkings that he needs to be watched, to be useful, to be relevant, to be desired. Meaning he does not change from the beginning of Chapter 3 to the end of it. Just like the secret bosses. Now, don't get it twisted. I don't think that this ending is the worst, most horrid thing you can do. Metatenna is very cool, and I'm not trying to come after it. After all, Tenna's development to Metaton's character is amazing, and I love it, but I'm also just saying, thematically, it lines up with this route. So please, Metatenna people, don't get mad at me. I think you guys are amazing, and I am in shock and awe at how you render pants. Like, how? How do you make them that shiny? But yeah, that thing is just kind of in line with it, because Queen does develop by the end of Chapter 2, so it's clear that the bosses need to develop in some formal way to have satisfying endings. Now for the DS scene. I think in this route, you shouldn't give Tenna to Metaton. Why? Well, at least not now. But why? Because I think in the future, there will be more interactions with Spamton. Tricky Tony can't seem to get his hands off of their relationship. Literally, in the 10th anniversary stream, he put Spamton in the goddamn... He replaced Sans with his other Tumblr Sexy Man character. And who's to say Tenna won't replace Sans tomorrow? We're one day into the 10th anniversary stream, so... If I finish this recording and you're listening to it and you're going, why didn't you reference the 20-minute Spamtenna cutscene in the second day of the 10th anniversary livestream? It's because I only watched day 1, alright? We're only up to day 1. Please, 20-minute cutscene. Please, 20-minute Spamtenna cutscene. Like I said, he said he would never do it again, never try and reach out to Tenna, apparently, but already he's manhandling a TV in the 10th anniversary, so I don't think he's gonna stay very consistent with that never doing it again. But I swear, they will have interactions. I'm seeing it in the future. I'm projecting it. I'm manifesting it. But Spamton is developing past the secret villain of Chapter 2. Even Queen developed after Chapter 2, like I said before. King is still developing, and when interacting with King, Tenna develops a bit more. Having this interaction with Spamton, I think, is something the two need. For Tenna to reignite a past relationship, specifically in that interaction with King, he's not relying on a Lightner to be watched. He's relying on another fellow Darkner to be watched. Perhaps having this interaction with Spamton is something that the two just need. For Tenna to reignite a past relationship, which could help further Spamton's arc, as well as reconciling whatever they had, and developing Tenna's arc as well, in hopes of no longer feeling abandoned as much, or being able to rely on other Darkners to bring himself purpose and worth, or whatever. I'm not sure if that makes sense. It is a long time into writing this, as I've I'm reading off my own writing right now, and I wrote this part 2 hours into the whole writing, and I think it was like at 1 a.m. I was writing the. You can tell. You can tell. I have a practical assignment tomorrow. I've written here, and I shouldn't be writing this. And I was right. I shouldn't have been writing this. I failed that assignment. Anyway, I get to redo it later. But I just think that there are some similarities that can be drawn between the current story of Deltarune, story of Undertale, and Spamtenna relationship. I'm not a theorist, so I can't really do much, but I don't know, there's something about divorce there. So yeah, I don't know how to end this. This was insane work. TLDR, Spamtenna is canon, and they enhance each other's stories. Go check out my Twitter. Go check out my commissions on VGen. Go check out my Spamtenna fanfic. Everything I do creatively is kind of Spamtenna right now. So go check that shit out, I guess. Thank you for watching. I don't know if any of this made sense. I'm really tired right now. I'm gonna cut this down, and it's gonna be a long video to edit. Anyway, I'll probably do some more Spamtenna stuff in the future. Thank you for everyone who commented on the previous video about Spamtenna. It means a lot. I'm glad that all of you could find solace in my story, and a lot of those comments made me cry. Genuinely, it was really nice for people to relate and say nice things, and to see how many people were affected by these two idiots, and how many people are still around because of them, me included. So, thank you. You can now turn the dial, cleave the screen. Goodbye. I'll see you in the next one. Links in the description for all of my resources. Thank you. Also, just had to come back in here and say, I finished watching the Undertale 10th anniversary stream, and oh my god, Gerson saying friends, business partners, couples. Okay, so it's a list, alright? What can we tell about a list? A list is when you list similar things, obviously. It's a fucking list. But you can also use a list for ascending order. Do you understand what I'm putting down? I'm saying that he went friends, and you all know what the definition of friends is, and then he went couples at the ending point. So the in-between of a friendship and a coupling is a business partnership. Spamtenna was a business partner, alright? They were a couple. They were almost a couple. They were more than friends. They were business partners, but they were less than a couple. That means that their relationship was complicated and nuanced, and they definitely wanted each other, and oh my god, why did Spamton put that thing on the TV? Anyway, yep, that's... I gotta go now. I gotta edit this video. You know what I'm gonna say. House husband? What the fuck does house husband mean? Toby? Toby? Older husband? Older husband? Older husband? After the Spamtenna question? Where you go, I'm so happy that you asked. Toby? Toby? Don't play with us, Toby. Also, another thing, I was watching a playthrough, and you know how you click on the green mouth for the Spamtenna scene, and then there's another one. And if you go into that, it's like a moral choice, love or hate. And if you choose love, it says love wins in rainbow text, and they kiss. Why is the only other room that is a secret room in that area, other than the Spamtenna scene, one about love winning? Gay people, rainbow? It's two different colored, carts as well, so you could say, oh, they're two different colors because they come from two different places, like maybe the Cyber City and the TV world. Oh my god, maybe it's Spamtenna reference. I don't know. Older husband, huh?